Well, I hope that sounded at least half as good out in YouTube land as it did in here. Wonderful. Good morning to all of you out there on YouTube. I wish you could be here. You wish you could be here, but COVID. Welcome to the virtual Unitarian Universalist Church of Buffalo. I'm Fran Manley. I'm a member of the Worship Associates ministry team, and I will be preaching this morning. Our worship associate is, thank you, Julie, whose job is to remind me to take my mask off, is Julie Taylor. And we are, as you've already found out, delighted and thrilled to welcome guest musicians this morning, the Alex MacArthur Band, with Elliot Scazzaro on saxophone, John Bacon on drums, and if you're following the order of service in the E-Blast, not Harry Grazer on piano, but George Caldwell on piano. We are blessed to be able to join together even when we're not able to be literally here. And we acknowledge that the land upon which our church stands rests on the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee people, the original nations of this land, who continue to call for justice and self-determination. Few announcements. There is a congregational meeting scheduled for next Sunday at noon after church. It will be held on Zoom rather than live. You will be receiving the link sometime this week, probably in the e-blast. Because of the current COVID surge, the RE ministry team has decided to postpone in-person programming for our kids until it's safe. In the meantime, the teams are developing creative projects and fun interactions for at-home or online play. We will keep all families informed as we navigate this challenging time. The gathering of grievers scheduled for this afternoon is canceled. A virtual covenant group for women of all ages is ready to welcome 6 new participants. They'll be meeting on the first Tuesday of each month from 2:15 to 4 p.m. For more details, check out the information in your e-blast. And if you don't get the e-blast, give a call to the office and ask to be put on that list. Our music ministry has an exciting announcement. We are starting up a monthly recital series. Events will be held every third Saturday of the month at 2 p.m. here at the church, once we reopen, and on YouTube. The series will showcase many musical gifts of our community. The first event, Jesse Downs' Voice Studio Recital, will be held on Saturday, January 22nd. And several other exciting events are planned for upcoming months, and they're listed on our website under music. If you are interested in proposing an event, please contact Music Director Jesse Downs.
Let us worship. Come together, joining hands and hearts, feeling the connection even if, for now, we can hold hands only in our imagination. Let our hands and hearts be links of chain that hold our lives together, not a chain of bondage, but a silver cord of strength, a ribbon of love and faith and community, giving us slack to sail the wind, yet holding us in a mystical embrace, that we may be alone, but never lonely, that we may be together, but never lost in the crowd, that we may be one without forfeiting uniqueness. Come together, joining hands and hearts, and let the spirit of life and the human spirit flow in each one and through us all as we gather here and there to share this time and space, and as we walk together on the journey. Come, let us worship. Please join with me in saying the words to the chalice lighting, as you see on your screen. We gather in loving community, inspiring one another to transform ourselves to create a more just and compassionate world. Now, can you get it? Now let us sing. We're going to sing hymn number 295, sing the praises for the journey. And the great thing about being at home is that you don't have to do this with your mask on. So I want to hear it. I want to hear your voices from at home right here in the sanctuary. So let's come do that. Now, I would like you to read with me the 7 principles. And if you don't know this, and Fran has very diligently pointed this out, is that our 7 principles are located inside our gray hymnal, Singing the Journey. And to find them, you simply turn to the very first hymn, May Nothing Evil Cross This Door, and then you flip the page before, and the 7 principles are right there. So let us read the 7 principles together. We, the member congregations of the Unitarian Universalist Association, covenant to affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person, justice, equity, and compassion in human relations, acceptance of one another, and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations, a free and responsible search for truth and meaning, the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process within our congregations and in the society at large, the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all, respect for the interdependent web of all existence. We are part.
Okay, there's a story before you sing. My turn. Any of you who have been around the church for 30 or 40 years may know something of the story I'm going to tell, but if you're newer than that, you might not have heard about this. How our 7 principles were born. Once upon a time, not all that long ago, there were some people who called themselves Unitarians, and some who called themselves Universalists. They were really a lot alike, and so they decided to come together and join one religion called, guess what? Unitarian Universalism. To remind themselves and to tell the world what they stood for, they made a list of things that were most important to them. They called these things their principles. That first set of principles lasted well enough for a while, but after about 20 years, some of the people said, it's time for a change. The women saw words like the ideals of brotherhood, justice, and peace, and the dignity of man, and they said, hey, we're not even in there. Some people saw that the only religious tradition mentioned was the Judeo-Christian tradition, and they said, hey, we're more than that. We can do better than this, they all said. If we all work together, we can make the principles a lot better. We can make principles that include us all and give us a vision of a better world. And so they set to work. They figured out a way for thousands of people in hundreds of UU churches to help make better principles. All across the country, people met in their churches to share their ideas and to think really hard about what the new principles should be. They asked each other, what ideals and values are most important to us? What does it mean deep down to be Unitarian Universalist? And even deeper down, what does it mean to be human? In the course of all that, some very important things happened. They changed the words so they included women as well as men. They wrote a whole new section on the sources of our tradition. They moved the search for truth to a new place exactly in the middle of the principles. They moved the inherent worth and dignity of every person to the beginning. And maybe most important of all, they came up with something new, something that had never been there before. The idea that everything and everybody in the world is connected to everybody and everything else. And when they had made all those changes, they had a set of principles that felt so true and right that people wore them on their T-shirts and put them on coffee mugs and even turned them into music. It was one of the great moments in our history. For 3 years or more, they had studied and argued. They had changed things and moved things. They had thrown some things out and added new things, but in the end, they agreed, and something new was born. It was one gigantic, free and responsible search for truth and meaning. In spite of all their differences and diversity, all those people working together had created 7 principles that would inspire us and guide us and challenge us for many years to come.
I'm as restless as a willow in a windstorm. I'm as jumpy as a puppet on a string. I'd say that I had spring fever, but I know it isn't even spring. I'm as starry-eyed and vaguely discontented, like a nightingale without a song. somewhere else, walking down a strange new street, hearing words that I have never heard from a man that I've yet to meet. I'm as busy as a spider spinning in daydreams. I'm as giddy as a child on a swing. Well, I haven't seen a crocus or a single rosebud or a robin flying on the wing. But I feel so gay in a melancholy way that in my eyes will be spirit. Oh, it might as well be spirit. I keep wishing I were somewhere else, just walking down a strange new street, hearing the words that I never ever heard from a man that I've yet to meet. I'm as busy as a little spider spinning on this little golden daydream. I'm as giddy as a baby on a swing. I haven't seen a crocus or a rosebud or a robin upon the wing. But I feel so gay in a melancholy way that I guess it might as well be spirit. It might as well be. It might as well be It might as well, oh, can't you see? Can't you see? Oh, pretty baby, can't you see? It might as well be
Don't you love that stuff? Each week, our congregation takes a good portion of its Sunday morning offering and gives it away to a social justice cause outside our church walls. This week, our social justice cause is the Buffalo Niagara LGBTQ History Project. This is a volunteer-run organization that preserves and shares the stories of Western New York's many LGBTQ communities. In doing so, they have 3 goals: to provide a more accurate account of how LGBTQ people live and build communities in Western New York, to promote intergenerational dialogue within the LGBTQ community, and to assert that local and regional LGBTQ histories matter just as much as histories originating in large coastal cities. Now, you're at home right now, and right now I would generally say, hey, go get your checkbook and write a check, send it to 695 Elmwood Avenue, Buffalo, New York, 14222, and that's great. But you know what? Right now, I want you to throw away that checkbook, and I want you to go online to our UUCB website, and click on the blue donate button, and share on that blue donate button right here, right now. You can do that. I go back every Sunday morning. I go back to my seat, and I do it right here from the sanctuary on my phone. I go onto this website, and I click my donation right then and there, and it goes right to the church. If yours is a gift to the congregation, please write pledge on that memo line if you're doing that check situation. Or if yours is a gift to our Share the Plate, write share on that memo line. Either way, if you're doing a check, write UUCB on the important line, and we'll do the rest. Let us give generously so we can live into our values.
In this world of ordinary people, extraordinary people, I'm glad there is you. In this world of overrated treasures, of underrated pleasures, I'm glad there is you. I live to love, I love to live with you beside me. This road so
Thank you. Today's reading is I Don't Believe in the Seven Principles by Doug Mutter. If you think of the seven principles as beliefs, then they quickly become nice ideas that it feels good to nod your head to. That's why they make such a terrible creed. Reciting them is too easy. Run the principles past someone who would never in a million years become a UU, and they're likely to say, yeah, sure, why not? Justice, equity, and compassion in human relations? I mean, I'm not for injustice, unfairness, and hard-heartedness, so sure, why not? But if you think of the principles as visions, as things that we are trying to see now in our minds so that we can bring them into reality in the future, that becomes a lot more challenging. For example, it's easy to nod your head to the idea that every person has worth and dignity. But when you're alone on the subway and somebody gets on who is so different from you that you find them scary or disgusting, do you see that person's worth and dignity? Is it present to you like a physical reality? Developing that kind of vision is not just a nice idea. It's a challenging spiritual practice. That's the whole point of Black Lives Matter. Of course, you believe as an abstract principle that lives matter. But can you look specifically at African Americans who have been demonized and stereotyped for centuries and see their value? Similarly, it's easy to nod your head when someone says that everything is connected. But the interdependent web of all existence, is it real to you? When Boko Haram wipes out an entire village in Nigeria, or when refugees stream out of Syria with nothing but the clothes on their backs, do you feel that vibrating down the web until it shakes something inside you? When you're trying to envision rather than just believe, suddenly, this isn't such an easy religion anymore. For me, it boils down to this. We're not just trying to believe in these seven principles. We're trying to make them real. First, to ourselves, so that we actually see them rather than just nod our heads when we hear the words. And then, having seen in our minds a world where the principles have become reality, we are committed, maybe even driven, to push the real world in that direction.
Let us join our hearts and minds now in a time of prayer, meditation, and reflection. Spirit of life and love, in whom the one and the many are woven and interwoven in the great web of all that is, in which there is nothing that is separate, nothing can be severed from the whole, and yet in which each thinnest thread and smallest knot is unique and valuable. Rock us gently in the web of life, that we may feel what we cannot always see, our intricate and untraceable connection with all that is, seen and unseen, and with the mystery in which we live and move and have our being. May we draw strength from that connection to do the work which each of us is uniquely called to do. May we find comfort in the depths of sorrow, in the sure knowledge that we are not alone. And may we feel the stirring of the sufferings of others, that we may reach out to ease them as we would our own. May we find peace in the knowledge that whatever joy and gratitude we feel spreads out to bless those with whom our lives are woven. And may we find courage from one another to go out into the world in the long, hard work of creation, repairing the parts of the web which we humans have broken in our carelessness, our selfishness, our hatred, weaving anew the places that have grown thin from lack of love. We especially hold in our hearts today Bob Bucati and all the family and friends of Nancy Bucati, who passed away earlier this week. We also hold in our hearts the 4 people who were taken hostage at a Reformed Jewish temple in Texas, and we are grateful that they have now been released unharmed. And now let us remember the names of friends and loved ones suffering in sorrow and celebrating in joy. You can enter them in the comments or just say them to yourself. We'll have a few moments of silence, but you can continue to add names during the music that follows as well. And if you're one of the few of us here in the sanctuary, feel free to speak them out loud. Let us be silent together for a moment. The breath of nature is upon us. The spirit of life is within us. The community of love is among us. So be it, blessed be, and let the church say, Amen.
much was stolen from me. When it seems heartbreak and loss will overcome me, I can hear you calling. Follow the footprints we left, and you find me there. You find me there. I believe that one day we will be reunited, silencing demons that turn up uninvited. But until that happens, follow the footprints we left, and I will find me there. You find me there. Following you will find me there.
When I first came into Unitarian Universalism in this church in the 1980s, the 7 principles as we know them today had only been in existence for 3 or 4 years. Nobody told me that, so I just assumed they had always been part of our tradition. I didn't see that there was anything particularly religious about them. But I liked them, if only because they gave me something to show my mom to tell her about this new church I was joining. I'm pretty sure I didn't think much about what they would actually or might actually mean to my life. And as I saw for myself how many different opinions UUs could hold on all kinds of subjects, I used to joke that the principles were just a list of the only 7 things we could all agree on. Maybe I wasn't really joking. People seem to treat them pretty much that way. A sermon or a workshop might talk about this principle or that one, but as far as I could see, nobody was looking at the principles as a whole and thinking about what the larger meaning might be. For that matter, neither was I. But then I started seminary, and I began a journey of discovery that continues to this day. This morning, I'm inviting you all to join me on that journey. My first big step on the journey came when I was taking a graduate class in religious education. We were assigned a paper setting forth the grounds and claims of RE in our tradition. What did we teach? What was it based on? What did we hope to accomplish? A big order. I knew that UU religious education at that time was in the middle of a major shift. Until recently, the goal had been to teach about religion, assuming that kids would choose their own path as they grew up. Now there was a new understanding that it was not only okay to teach our religion, but that was actually what we should be doing. There were new curricula for different ages, and most of them focused their lessons on the 7 principles. So that was my starting place, but I wasn't sure where to go with it. As I wrestled with writing that paper, I found myself for the first time looking at the principles not just as a list, but as a single unified statement. It was kind of like the way, as a former English major, I used to look at a poem I was analyzing. I saw first, as many people have pointed out, that the arrangement is not just random. It moves step by step from the inherent worth and dignity of the individual person through a wider and wider focus until it ends with the interdependent web of all existence. But that's not all. The more I thought about the pattern, the more I clearly saw that it wasn't just that the focus gets wider and wider from 1 to 7. The even more important pattern is that each of those inner principles represents a different kind of balance between the individualism of the first one and the interdependence of the 7th one. And in the center, right at the point where individualism and interdependence are most in tension, is the 4th principle, a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. You may find this funny, but seeing this like it was like finding a treasure chest I didn't even know I was looking for, really. So the principles were actually not just a random list of 7 things we agreed on. Instead, they contained in their very structure what I'm calling the hidden principle, a theology of what it is to be human, and a theology of where and how we search for truth and meaning. We humans, all of us, live in the tension between 2 completely opposite ways of understanding who we are. Yes, we are separate, unique individuals with inherent worth and dignity. And we are inextricable parts of a great web of connection that includes everyone and everything there is. Is it even possible for both of those to be true at once? Yet the place of tension and balance between those is the place where we search for truth and meaning. Wow, just wow. I had never heard or read anybody talk about the principles this way. And truth be told, I wasn't really sure I had it right. But once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. And because I'm one of those weird people who gets excited about ideas, I was really excited about my discovery. But it turned out that my search wasn't done yet. I kept on thinking about it and doodling diagrams to illustrate my thinking and talking with my colleagues. And I began to see there was even more to it. I looked at the 2nd principle, which calls us to justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. I saw that it's all about how we as individuals relate to each other. Then I looked at the 6th, which calls for world community and peace, liberty, and justice for all. Do you see it? It's a partner to number 2. It lifts up our vision of justice for the whole world. One is about the individual, the other is about the human race. So this was a whole new dimension I hadn't even noticed before. So I looked at the 3rd principle, acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations. Now we've moved a little farther from the purely individual to think about our congregations and how we nurture one another and help each other grow together. Its partner is the 5th principle, the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process in congregations and in society at large. These are the ways that whole groups from our congregations on up to the whole society can grow toward their greatest potential. So again, similar ideas, but one with the focus more toward the individual, the other more toward the whole. And in the center, right where individualism and interdependence meet, is our free and responsible search for truth and meaning. I learned that there'd been quite an argument about whether the search for truth should be called the foundation or the center of our liberal faith. But in the end, they didn't use either word. They simply placed it in the exact middle. And what a difference that made. This has two, maybe even too big, maybe even enormous implications. First, it tells us, this is very important, it tells us we cannot find truth and meaning by searching all by ourselves, any more than we can by giving over our thinking to some collective, some larger body. We simply don't exist as separate individuals, and any truth that comes from only that perspective is suspect. But so is any truth that comes from being completely immersed in what these days we call the hive mind. As psychologist Robert Keegan said, we must search for truth for ourselves, but not by ourselves. We must search for truth for ourselves, but not by ourselves. The second implication points to the nature of the truth and meaning we're searching for. It's something that has to take into account both of those extremes of our human nature. It has to take into account that none of us is separate from the whole, just as none of us is totally submerged in the whole. Whatever we find probably won't be exactly in the middle, but it will be somewhere along the continuum from one to the other. Truth be told, after exploring all of this in my senior thesis at Meadville Lombard, I still wasn't sure about it. So I sent my paper to the Reverend Roy Jones, who had been chair of the commission that guided the process that created the principles. I asked him, maybe not quite in these words, I asked him, am I onto something here, or am I crazy? His answer, I wasn't crazy at all. He didn't think the creators had been consciously thinking about it this way, but he agreed that the structure I had found was really there. If you happen to have yesterday's e-blast handy, you can see a graphic. You can't see it from where you are, except sort of. You can see a graphic of the principles as a stone archway. This is not my graphic. This one comes from the UUA curriculum articulating your UU faith. If we were meeting in person today, you'd have it on the front cover of your order of service. If you look at it, or look at it later if you can't catch it right now, you see that the first and the seventh principles are like two pillars, one on each side, that support everything else. At the center, on the top, is the keystone, the fourth principle. The graphic points to how all these parts relate to each other. You can see how if you remove, just imagine this, if you removed any of these stones, definitely the keystone, but really any of them, we just have a bunch of rocks lying on the ground. In terms of the principles, we'd be back to what I used to think the principles were, just a random collection of a few things we could agree on. It's not hard to find examples of the ways our whole society is wrestling with trying to find the right answers in this kind of tension between the one and the many. Take one of the most obvious, how we're dealing with the pandemic. Masks, for example. When we're actually gathered here in person, we all wear masks. We say at the beginning of every service, in this church, we wear our masks over our nose and our mouth because we care for ourselves and each other. For the same reason, we encourage everyone who can to be vaccinated. That's a position pretty close to the middle of the arch. But it doesn't mean we all got to the same place in the same way. Some of us put up with, maybe even welcome, something a bit inconvenient and uncomfortable so that we can be together safely. We do it to protect ourselves and to protect everyone else. Maybe some of us don't really feel it's necessary for ourselves if we've been vaccinated, but we do it because it helps protect others. And some people don't come at all because even with the precautions we're taking, it doesn't feel safe to them. Some stay away because they are or might be infectious. Again, maybe they feel okay, but they are thinking about everybody else. The task force figuring all this out is thinking about the greatest good for the most people, what's best for the congregation as a whole, while still keeping in mind what each one of us needs as individuals. So we're not thinking exactly the same way, but we all end up somewhere in the middle between our personal point of view and that of the congregation as a whole. One of the reasons the pandemic is lasting so long is that there are too many people looking at it as though they were only separate, unconnected individuals, as in, it's my right to make my own separate personal decision about whether to wear a mask or to be vaccinated. And if I choose not to do either one, it's still my right to go anywhere and do anything I want to. And if that puts other people in danger, it's not my problem. It's a free country. Nobody can tell me what to do. Those are the kinds of issues we wrestle with these days. What's best for each of us as individuals? What's best for society, even the world as a whole? And if the answers to those questions seem to be in conflict, how do we decide? I'm not saying that the answers will always be in the middle. Exactly. It would be easier if they were. But I am saying that in looking for truth and meaning in this or any other situation, the place we need to be is right in the middle, right where the tension is the greatest. It's not an easy place to be. Feeling the importance of the individual, me as an individual, feeling the importance of the individual on one hand and the interdependence of the great web on the other, how do we find the right balance between them? Wrestling with those questions is what a free and responsible search for truth and meaning looks like. And that is the message of our principles, and especially of the deep structure I'm calling the hidden principle. So, now, if you followed me a bit, we have a deeper understanding of our principles, and we have a glimpse of the hidden principle. Have we reached the end of our journey then? Actually, no. Nowhere near it. Now, only now, the real journey begins. Now we're ready to use our new understanding as a guide to the path ahead. Now we have the treasure map that can guide us to finally step up to the challenge Doug Muter points to in our reading. It's not enough, he says, just to believe in the principles. It's also not enough just to analyze and understand them. The real challenge is to work individually and together to make them real, first to ourselves, so we actually see them rather than just nod our heads when we hear the words. And then, having seen in our minds a world where the principles have become reality, we are committed, maybe even driven, to push the real world in that direction. Amen. May it be so. And now you've come this far with me on the journey. Now let's sing. Come and go with me to that land where freedom and justice and peace and all good things abound. Number 1018 in the Teal hymnal.
Join with me in reciting the words to extinguish our chalice, as is on your screen. As we extinguish the flame of this chalice, may we carry its light with us into the world in the power of peace, faith, justice, and love.
This church is dedicated to the proposition that behind all our differences, beneath all our diversity, there is a unity which makes us one and binds us together forever, in spite of time and death and the space between the stars. We pause in silent witness to that unity. Remember, you are blessed. You are a blessing. And above all, always remember, you are not alone. You are never alone. So be it, blessed be, and let the church say, Amen.